In this video, I want to talk to you about backing up your hard work. So in the event something happens down the line and your web host goes out of business or your site just gets hacked or whatever other nightmarish type problem could occur, you really should have some type of a backup of your WordPress site so that whenever it comes time for you to put everything back in its place, you'll have something to put back rather than having to go through and trying to recreate that year's worth of posts or comments from other people that are frankly impossible to redo. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are two primary components of your WordPress site. That's your MySQL database and your WordPress installation, the core files and directories of your WordPress site. So you want to make sure that you back up both of those. One thing you might want to do is head over to the WordPress.org site, and you can follow this URL here, or you can just kind of poke around until you find it. But it's codex.wordpress.org/WordPress, that's capitalized by the way, otherwise it won't work, underscore backups. That'll bring you to this page here, and there's a world of information in here. But coming on down almost to the bottom here, you've got the automatic backups. Now this does not just cover the database, but some of these tools will help back up your entire site. Now, if you go this route, keep in mind that you should every now and then do a manual backup just to make sure that in case the automatic stuff just didn't do what it was supposed to do, you definitely have one that you made sure occurred through a manual backup. Now, how often do you do backups? That's a pretty good question. Or how active is your WordPress site? If you've got comments and posts every day, then I would say do a backup every night. Look at it like this. How much work would you want to do to replace how much work you put into your site? So if you do daily content or daily updates to your site, then if you only do a weekly backup, then you're going to have somewhere between 4 to 6 or 7 days of work you're going to have to recreate. So keep that in mind. Now, if you only add content once a week, then a daily backup is kind of overkill, wouldn't you think? So again, it depends greatly on how active your site is. But at the very least, you want to have one at least once a week would be my thought. Again, depending upon the activity that takes place on your site. Now, at this location, you can find all kinds of information on how to manually back up, which is what I'm going to demonstrate here, as well as automatic backup. So if you need some extra stuff besides what I'm just going to show you, now you've got the idea. Right here's where you can go to get that. Now, the method I'm going to use is using your cPanel control panel. You can do pretty much the same thing, only a little bit slower if you ask me, by using your FTP client. But here we're going to go into our file manager, left click on that, it'll bring up, well, if you're logged in, it'll bring up the file manager, and here we are. And what we're going to do here, as soon as this loads, we want to make sure that we are in the directory of our WordPress install, and that would be under public_HTML. And like a lot of other things, there's probably several ways in which this can be done. This is just one of them. Now, once we're here, then you want to come up here and select all. Even though that box is checked, go ahead and click on that puppy again. That way everything's highlighted and everything's selected. Then somewhere in here, right click, compress. You just left click on compress. And then down here, it automatically chooses the name of the first item up here at the top of what you selected. Without highlighting or messing with the .zip, select the name that is given up here and put in your own name. I'm going with today's date. Unless you're across the pond, then you might change this, but for us Yankees, this is January 21st, 2011. So now we just click on compress files, and it's basically zipping up everything that's in our files. And click on close, and then somewhere in amongst here is going to be that zip file. Now then I just go ahead and select this, go to download, and if you remember way back in one of the earlier videos where we did our organization stuff, we created a couple of folders, and one of those folders was a backup for database and a backup for files. We're going to download this into that backup folder for the files. Now, as you can see, I've navigated to my backup folder, and inside of here I've got two folders, one for files, that's what we just did, and one for database, which we'll do here in a second. So I just open this up and click on save, And depending on how big this is, and it's not very big, it'll take either a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. Now, once that's downloaded, then we can just delete this guy. Just right click on this after it's selected and left click on delete. Are you sure? Yes, please, thank you. Goodbye. Now then, we've got our files backed up. Let's take care of the other part of our WordPress install. Let's back up our MySQL database. And we do that by coming down a little bit further, depending on how you have your cPanel customized. If you don't, then it's going to be close to the bottom right here. MySQL databases. No, I'm sorry. That's where we go to create the database. This is where we go to backup and see how things are going. That's PHP MyAdmin. Left click on that. Give it a second to open up. Now, if you have several databases, they'll show them all right here. And right now we have the one database. So we just select this, and it will show us all the tables here, all the content here. And what we want to do now is click on Export. Left click on that. And usually all the default settings are fine and dandy. So I wouldn't mess with it unless you've been given instructions to do this or that. So you want to make sure that all of these tables are selected. And the only time that I would deviate from this is if you've got a very large database, more than 50 or 60 megabytes, which is huge, because most of the time we're talking less than a meg. But if you've got a huge database, then there might be some bits of information in here that are not really necessary. Some things like content on particular plugins, like statistic plugins or spam plugins. These things are constantly monitoring your site, and you really don't need that information. And frankly, from time to time, I'll come in here and clean out my database by just deleting those things, and it will repopulate the next time that I load the WordPress site anyway. So again, that being said, and there's more information in that directory that I showed you here under the WordPress.org site for just that. But anyway, let's get back here. So make sure all these guys are selected. Basically leave everything here the way that it should be, or the way that it is by default, and make sure that's SQL checked. Save as file. Leave this unzipped and click on Go. Again, we're going to be navigating to the location where we want this to be backed up at, and we want to back this up a little bit, go into database, and you can see the funky name right here. You may want to just create a new directory for each one of these database backups, and the name of that directory will be, if you said today's date, you move to the head of the class. And that's it. And that is how you can back up your files and your database. And it's pretty simple to simply put things back into place if the old crapola hits the fan blades and you have to reinstall everything. Now you've got everything to reinstall. Hopefully you never need it, but as I've said many times before, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. That's going to bring us to the end of this video on backing up your WordPress site.